My name is Bonitunya and this is Business. Kenya's debut sovereign bond expected to hit the market by the end of June this year. Here is KTN's Charles Kitonga with all that report.
Speaking to Bloomberg News on the sidelines of the 49th annual meeting for the African Development Bank in Kigali, Rwanda, Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich alluded to the listing of the bond by end of June. Rotich is reported to have indicated that this will be preceded by a 5 or 6 day investor roadshow by the Kenyan government. Back home, market analysts reckon that the health of Kenya's tax receipts and expenditure will be key in bond issuance.
Are they healthy? Are they stable? And how is the government using them?
The listing of the bond has been in the offing for the last 1 year, with several delays recorded mainly attributed to the unfavorable market condition. However, the last hurdle was the contentious payment of the 1.4 billion shillings to Anglo-leasing related companies.
With less than 2 months to go before the end of the financial year, the choice was either to start cutting back on government expenditure, to start cutting back on programs and service delivery to Kenyans, or to pay in order for us to be able to move forward as a country.
While analysts agree that the Eurobond may be a hit amongst investors, premiums at which Kenya will be willing to auction it at will also play a great role.
And I think governments across in EAC are not willing to pay something, talking about 8%. I don't think they're willing to pay that. Yeah, I think they've capped there. It's sort of salient, but I think they've capped it at above 7.5%.
Apart from financing major infrastructure projects across the country, the bond will also settle debts, among them repayment of a 52 billion loan to a consortium of 3 international banks. The 3-month extension granted by the consortium as requested by the government, analysts say does not affect creditworthiness of the country. Charles Gitonga, KTN Business.
Kenya's position as the leading economy in the region stands threatened by declining export to neighbours. Adelaide Changole looks at that relationship between Kenya and her local neighbours.
For years, Kenya has been the primary source of manufactured products to the East African region, but a worrying trend has emerged over the last 2 years as the value of Kenyan exports to the EAC began to shrink, while imports from the EAC have risen.
There are a number of non-tariff barriers that affect manufacturers in the region.
According to data from the 2013 economic survey, the value of Kenyan exports to the EAC fell by 7.4% to 124 billion shillings in 2013. More specifically, the volume of exports to Uganda reduced from 67 billion to 65 billion, while exports to Tanzania shrunk from 46 billion to 40 billion, and exports to Rwanda also fell from 16 billion to 13 billion over the year. On the other hand, imports from Uganda rose from 15 billion to 16 billion, while Rwandan exports also grew from 822 million shillings to over 1 billion. This contributed to the deterioration of the export-import ratio, which weakened from 37.7% in 2012 to 35.5% in 2013.
We need to be competitive. So issues around the cost of energy is a very big issue. Issues around taxation.
But analysts from the Institute of Economic Affairs say the continued expansion of the manufacturing sector, which grew by 4.8% in 2013 compared to 3.2% in 2012, means that companies are still producing goods and have probably just diversified their export markets, perhaps to include countries outside EAC but within the COMESA region.
Could be of worry is if our shares of exports to EAC was shrinking, as well as our manufacturing.
In his estimation, the increase in imports from EAC showcases the continued expansion of Kenya as East Africa's biggest economy, with rising demands that cannot be met by local production alone and requires additional input from the emerging economies in the region.
So maybe it's a rebalancing, because previously Kenya has exported more than the other countries to the region.
At the same time, analysts also urge both manufacturers and government to keep their eyes on the ball so as not to miss the growing regional market. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business.